Morning, good morning. How's it going? Has everyone had a good week? Yes? Yes? Speak to me. Cool. Fantastic. Because I have had an awesome week. I've had an exciting week. It's been a very loud week. And as Wes and Walter shared with us earlier, we had SALT going on. So my week was full of little kids running around, being very loud, asking whether they can braid my hair, because it's gotten to that point now. We've even got like a little bun thing going on. And the best part is they're also asking whether they can feel my beard. I've always dreamed that when I started growing this beard that, kids would just go, "Hey, can I just touch your beard?" So they were very thrilled. They were like, "Why is it so soft? Why is it so wiry?" It's because I take good care of it, guys. That's the main reason why. But my week has been really, really good. It's been really loud, but it has been fantastic. These kids have enjoyed it. And like Wes and Walter said, if you guys aren't doing anything this evening, come join us. Come support them. It's really, really awesome. But we've come to the last day of our series, the last week of our Joshua series. And for the past 4 weeks, we've been focusing on this character, Joshua, and some characters in his story in the Bible. And Joshua, he was one of the greatest leaders for Israel after Moses. And so, each week for these past 4 weeks, we've been focusing or, looking at different themes or focus points. So the first week we looked at courage. The second week we looked at trust and Rahab's story. The third week, Hamish shared with us about remembering and how they crossed the Jordan River. And then just last week, Wes shared with us about the walls of Jericho and this idea of perseverance. And so this week, to end off the series, we thought, hey, how can we end off this series in a good way, in a strong, positive way? And so we decided that we wanted to share with you guys about choices, about the choices that we make and the choices that are extended to us. And so I actually found a quote by John Maxwell, who's one of my favorite leaders. He's an amazing guy. And he says, "Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you." And as I was reading this quote, all I could remember, it was like a massive flashback, like in the movies, like time travel back towards in time in my brain. And all I could remember was, man, when I was a teenager, which was like 6 years ago, I didn't make such wise decisions, like not very smart decisions at all. And I was actually chatting to someone this week, and they said that from the ages of 14 to 17, the part of your brain where it makes all the decisions, all your wise choices come from, is actually under construction. Now, I don't agree with that, because mine extended till I was about 20 years old. There was a bit of complications with the construction process of that side of my brain. And so, until I was about 20 years old, my decision-making wasn't that great. And so, one thing I remember is when I was in high school, I was a big drama guy. I love drama. And for some of you guys who know, drama was my thing. When I was in high school, if anyone said, "Hey, do you know Jordan Ferdinandez?" And they'll be like, yep, he's the guy that does drama and all this kind of stuff. And so when I was about 17 or 18 years old, I think in my final year of school, my drama teacher and the director, we were going to do a performance. And she comes up to me and she goes, "Hey, Jordan, what do you think about playing a woman in this performance? It's only this part here, and then you can do this." So I was like, you know what? I don't look very womanly. I mean, I didn't have a beard back then, but even then, I didn't look very womanly. I didn't have long hair. And I thought, you know what? This is actually going to be really, really funny. This is like the best choice I can make for my acting career. Just imagine. And so I said yes. I was like, yes, I will do it. I will be a woman in this play. And so practices went on, all that kind of stuff. And fast forward to performance night. I'm standing in the wings. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm like, "Ooh, this is great. I've got my dress on and my wig, and I'm looking all like hot." I don't know. But then my turn, I had to walk on stage. And so I walk on stage. I'm all like fancy and beautiful. And then I turn towards the audience. And the first person I see is my crush. And I was 17 years old, and I'm like, at that moment, I realized this was a bad choice. I made the wrong decision, guys. Because look, this girl, like, she was gorgeous, okay? She was from Sweden, so they good looking. And she was blonde. She was ticking all my boxes. And I was like, oh, I made the wrong choice, guys. And so, anyway, did the performance. It went really well. People laughed. They loved it. All that kind of good stuff. I didn't end up dating her, which is a little bit sad because she missed out and I missed out. But it's okay. And I blame that choice because it really took a hit to my confidence about dating girls. And so I blame that choice thoroughly. But, our lives nowadays are just so full of choices, where we are extended so many different options, so many different choices in our lives today. And for some of us, I'm going to go through a little list of some of the choices. For some of us, it's what university I want to go to, whether I want to go to university, whether I want to stay here in New Zealand or whether I want to go to America or the UK, whether I want to study abroad. Whether I want to actually start uni right now or whether I want to take a gap year. What do I want to study in uni? For some of us, it's whether we want to go for that party this evening or next week. Whether I'm going to have to be the sober driver, whether I'm going to choose to be the sober driver, or whether I'm going to get my drink on. When I'm going to get a little party on. For some of us, it's we're thinking like big future. We're thinking about spouses. We're thinking about, hey, is this girl that I'm dating right now, am I going to choose to marry her? And for the girl, it might be like, hey, if this guy asks me to marry him, am I going to choose to say yes? For some of us, it might be, hey, we're actually thinking about buying a house. It's ridiculous in this economy. But it might be, hey, we're trying to buy a house, or do we want to continue to rent? For some of us, it might be, hey, do we want to have kids right now, or do we want to have kids a little bit later, making that choice? For some of us, it's, hey, we need to exercise more. We need to actually go to the gym, or we need to eat healthier. We need to do all these things to be a little more fit. For some of us, it's the job that we are in, whether we are choosing to stay with this job or leave this job or take this job or take this promotion or whatever it may be. And so as this series was going on, and as I was thinking about all these choices that we have to make and this message on choices, in the past 4 weeks as we've explored, I realized that actually in every single one of the stories of the past 4 weeks, a choice was made. Sometimes it was multiple choices, but at least one choice was made in every single week that we explored. And so in the first week, it was Joshua saying yes to leading Israel. He could have said no. He's like, I'm done. No, that's okay. But he said yes. He said, hey, yes, God, you're asking me to lead Israel, and I am going to lead it. And I'm going to lead it after Moses, who was the greatest leader for Israel. It's no easy task. And then in the second week, we looked at Rahab's choice to protect the two spies. The two spies that had infiltrated her own home country, and she chose to protect them because she saw the work that God was doing for the nation of Israel. In the third week, we looked at Joshua's choice to follow God and cross the Jordan. And Hamish was explaining that, at this point when they chose to cross the Jordan, it was flowing at its highest. It was at its strongest. It was at its most dangerous. And Joshua chose to go, okay, God, you're saying that we got to cross it now. Let's cross it now. And then last week, Wes shared with us about the walls of Jericho and Joshua's choice to follow God's instructions to walk around this fortress, this impenetrable fortress, so that they could bring down the walls of Jericho and they could defeat their enemy. And as I realized this, and throughout all these realizations of the past 4 weeks, I realized that God was somehow always involved with every decision that they made. Now, Joshua, as the leader of Israel, always chose to follow God in every single instance. And as a leader, what he did was he influenced the nation of Israel. Or we could say that he was planting this seed of influence every time he chose to follow God's direction. So a similar example, okay, would be for the parents here, or the would-be parents here, the expecting parents. Now, I'm not a parent, although I felt like one this week. But I'm not a parent. But I have seen and I've experienced thus far in my life that sometimes as parents, for our kids, on behalf of our kids, we make a choice on their behalf. We say, hey, look, you're going to do this because I see that in the future it's only going to benefit you. And sometimes they complain and sometimes they go, oh, but I don't want to. But we say, no, this is a choice that I am making for you because I see that it is going to have future benefit in your life. And we hope that, when we're making these choices for them, that we're influencing them, that we're planting that seed so that when they're old enough, when they come to that point where they can make choices for themselves, they choose to make wise decisions. But then as parents, we know that, there comes a point where we actually have to extend that choice to our kids, where we say, you know what, you are now old enough to make this choice for yourself, or you now know what's going to happen, you know the scenario, you know this and that. You choose. There comes a point where we extend that choice to our kids. And so this is actually what Joshua did. This is what Joshua did to the nation of Israel. As he led in choosing God in every single instance, he chose on behalf of Israel. He led. He influenced them. He planted those seeds. And then he extended that choice to Israel. The choice of whether or not they would choose to follow God. So we jump all the way back, all the way to the end of Joshua. And in chapter 23 and 24, Joshua in his dying days, I think in the Bible it says that he was 110 years old. In his dying days, he gathers all the nation, the whole of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, the leaders, the elders, and the judges, the big honchos. And before he extends this choice to them of whether or not to follow God, he gets them to recall all the things that God has done for them. He asks them to reflect on their history, on their lives. So some of the events that he gets them to remember date back all the way to Abraham. Now, Abraham, for those of you who don't know, and that's okay, Abraham is known as the father of all nations. He's the guy that God said, hey, your descendants are going to be as numerous as the stars. And so that's the first thing that Joshua gets them to remember. He says, hey, guys, Israel, leaders, elders, judges, do you remember that God actually promised Abraham that his descendants, who you are, will be as numerous as the stars? And for them, they were like, hey, yeah, that's true. But we know that that extends to us. And then he gets them to remember how God actually sent Moses, who is his predecessor, this leader, this amazing leader, to lead them out of out of Egypt, out of slavery, out of fear. And how for 40 years they wandered around in this desert. And how for those 40 years God provided for them and protected them. And then how right at the end of those 40 years he brought them to this land that he had promised them. And then how they crossed the Jordan River at its highest peak, at its highest point. And they went and defeated this enemy whose fortress was impenetrable. And then how numerous cultures and civilizations, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, all the ites in that land, how each of them came and fought against Israel, and every single time they defeated those people. He gets them to look back and realize that God's faithfulness towards them has always been there. And the promises that he has made towards them, he's always kept. And that throughout their entire history, from all the way from Abraham to where they were now, he had walked alongside them. never faltering. And then after this, after all, Joshua gets them to remember and reflect and recall everything that God has done to them. That's when he then offers this choice. And so in chapter 24, verse 15, he says, "But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves." He says, choose for yourselves. I'm not going to make this choice for you. Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites whose land you now live in. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Before Joshua could even finish his sentence, the Israelite leaders and judges and everyone, they're like, "Joshua, you can stop talking. It's okay. You don't even have to finish that sentence whatsoever, because we choose to follow God." And at that moment, Joshua goes, "Oh, mate, that's awesome. Fantastic. We're done here. I can go home. Good luck. Have a great time. I'm out." He didn't do that. Joshua goes, "Okay, cool. Are you sure? Are you sure?" And he doesn't do this once. He doesn't challenge them just once. He challenges them 4 times. 4 times he challenges them. And each of those times, Israel says, yes. Yes, I'll follow God. Yes, I understand. Yes, I will do that. Yes. And so as I was reading this, the question that came up, that was in my brain as to why, was why? But why? Why would Joshua challenge them 4 times when Israel had said yes already? Why would Joshua challenge them 4 times when Israel had said yes 3 times? Isn't 3 enough? The reason is because Joshua knew that if the Israelite leaders and elders and judges were to make this decision, was to make this choice, it was a choice that they could not make half-heartedly. It was a choice that they had to make wholeheartedly. He knew that this choice was the ultimate choice someone could make. And he knew that it was not something that you could sit on the fence about. They had to make a choice. And they had to make the ultimate choice. And so fast forward now. I know we're jumping around a little bit, but fast forward a couple of 100 years. And there was another man that made an ultimate choice on our behalf and then extended the choice to follow God. And his name was Jesus. The ultimate choice that he chose to do was to die on this cross willingly. And for guys, if you guys didn't know, I didn't know until a few weeks ago when I was studying, but the cross was the absolute worst way to die. It was saved for the worst criminals ever. Think of the worst criminal you could think of, and that's how he would have died. And that's what Jesus chose to endure. He chose to suffer so that we wouldn't have to. And so when he chose to die on that cross for us, he planted that seed of salvation in us, in all of us. And then he extends the choice with no cost whatsoever. It's not like he says, "Hey, you need to choose first, and then I'm going to die for you." It's not like he's saying, "Hey, you need to choose first, then that seed that I planted, then it grows." He did already, and then he extended. And Joshua gets Israel to reflect on what God has already done. And then he extends, and there's that connection. Both Jesus and Joshua extend this choice to the people, to all of us. Because they knew and they understood that this ultimate choice that had to be made by Israel, by all of us individually, has always been and will always be our choice. In other words, the ultimate choice is ultimately our choice. Super simple, real easy. The ultimate choice is ultimately our choice. For some of us here, we might be thinking, but why? But why should I follow a God that I can't see? But why should I follow a God that has never kept his promises? But why should I follow a God that won't even walk alongside me? But why should I follow a God that doesn't even add value in my life? And I think if we spend a little more time together, we could actually come up with 100 more reasons or 100 more hesitations as to why we should not follow God. But truthfully, if we did spend that time together, I know that we could come up with 100 reasons as to why we should follow God. When I have looked back on my life and I have remembered, I have seen these hesitations answered. And these hesitations that I've just said, I get these hesitations because I've lived these hesitations. And if I can be honest with you, these hesitations are still in my life sometimes. But as I've reflected and as I've remembered on my life, on my history, I've actually seen these hesitations answered. For some of you guys here, you guys know that before I moved to New Zealand, I studied in Australia. And I was studying international relations. And Australia, fantastic country, beautiful place. But I hated it there. It was the most difficult time for me in my life. I had no friends. My studies weren't going great. I was getting emails from deans and stuff saying, you're not going to your classes. I don't know what that was about. But it was the most difficult time for me in my life. And this was a point in my life where those 100 hesitations to follow God were just piling up. They were just piling and piling and piling and piling and piling. However, when I look back at this point in my life, when I reflected back at this point, I can actually pinpoint areas in my life that God has actually walked alongside me, that God has provided for me. When I first moved to New Zealand, I knew one person, and she invited me to this place. And because of that, I have wonderful people in my life. God added value in my life by putting these people in my life who have mentored me, who have spoken great things to me, who have encouraged me to do crazy things. He's invited me into this community where I can come as I am, without fear of judgment, without anything, and I can just be me. And a place where I can feel supported. Even with the people that he has brought in my life, I may not have seen God physically, but through these people, I have seen God. By the words that they have spoken into my life. By the amazing community that they have been for me and my family. And as with the promises, only when I've looked back in my life can I see those promises being kept. Some promises that I didn't even know that were made, God has kept them. There came a point in my life where I had to choose. And in that moment, I did what Joshua did. And I did what Joshua got Israel to do. And I looked back and I remembered on my life, on my history. And then just like Joshua, like he declared it, I publicly declared. And I chose to follow God and I got baptized. But understand that even though I chose to follow God, it doesn't mean that I'm a perfect person. Y'all know this. I am not a perfect person. Just because we choose to follow God doesn't mean we automatically become these perfect people. We will continue to make mistakes. I know I still make mistakes. I'm pretty sure I made one yesterday. Even Israel, who was challenged 4 times, continued to make mistakes. But it does mean that when we choose to follow God, when we make that choice, when we make that ultimate choice, that we are making it wholeheartedly. And that we are making that choice understanding that it means that we're allowing God into every single area of our lives. The areas that are messy. The areas that we hide from people. And even as I said that, I was like, no. This is challenging. This is challenging even for me because I know that there are areas in my life that I do not want God in because they are too messy, because I'm just hiding it from people. But this is the amazing part, and it truly is amazing. God does not care about the messy parts. He isn't afraid of the messy parts. He isn't afraid to walk alongside us in those moments in our lives where we are at our worst. He's not going to hold back his promises because we come to him beat up and muddy. He will not stop adding value to our lives because we hide from him. And he will always continue to show himself to us even when we can't feel as if we can completely show ourselves to him. So my question to us then is, and it is to us, it's to me as well, if God will always do this for us, then why wouldn't we follow him? If we know that he isn't afraid of those messy parts, that he isn't afraid to walk alongside with us, why would we let the 100 hesitations overpower the 100 reasons as to why we should follow God? And this is not an easy choice to make. This is not always an easy choice to make. And this is not a choice that once we make it, it automatically transforms us. It is a choice that we have to make daily. A choice that influences all our other choices, that in turn transform us. A hero of mine, his name is Nick Vujicic, and I've shared this a couple of times before. And Nick Vujicic, he was born with a syndrome called tetraamelia syndrome. And basically, he was born without any arms or legs. And he's got like this little foot toe thing that he calls his chicken drumstick. It's really funny. But he for those of us that don't know, he's a Christian motivational speaker. He goes to schools, he talks about bullying, he shares his life story. He talks at massive conferences and all these great events, and he shares his story. And he's written a couple of books. And in one of his books, it's called Life Without Limbs. And in this book, he writes that he had to make a choice one day. There came a point in his life where he had to make a choice. He had two options in front of him. His first option was to end his life because it was so incredibly difficult. His parents were finding it difficult. His siblings were finding it difficult because they were getting bullied because of him. He was getting bullied. It would have just been easier to end his life. So that was one choice. And then there was the other choice. And his other choice was, do I want to be strong and be courageous and trust that this situation that I am in, who I am physically, is exactly who God wants me to be? And to use what I have and make something of it. To motivate, to inspire, to change, to transform lives. Obviously, we see what he had chose. But he writes that this choice that he made to continue going on, to use what he had, was a choice that he had to make daily because the bullying didn't stop. The insults didn't stop. His struggles did not stop. But it was a choice that he had to make daily. The best decision that I have made, and I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting on stage and I'm chatting to you guys, but it is quite literally the best decision I have made, is to follow God. Because even though at times it has been difficult, even though at times where plans have not gone according to plan, and things haven't worked out how I thought it would work out, God has always added value in my life. And the choices that I have made after this choice have influenced my other choices. And those choices have been only for the positive, even if they didn't work out how I intended it to do. This was not a decision where I could sit on the fence about. It was a decision and a choice that I had to make wholeheartedly, and that I continue to make daily. So I want to invite the band back on stage, because I'm almost done with this. But as they're coming up, I want to challenge you guys. This is my challenge. That this ultimate choice that is placed in front of us with no strings attached, that is extended to us freely, that will only add value to our lives. This ultimate choice that invites us into a relationship with a God that walks alongside us. A God that shows himself in so many different ways. A God that keeps his promises. A God that has our best future interest at the center of his heart. That when we come to that point in our lives where we realize that this, and we see that this ultimate choice has been placed in front of us, that it has always been in front of us and has been the whole time. That we, like Israel, choose to follow God wholeheartedly and choose to follow him, understanding that he doesn't expect or want us to be perfect. That all he wants from us is to be strong and courageous and to enter into a relationship with him. The ultimate choice of following God into entering a relationship with God is ultimately our choice. Let me pray. Dear God, thank you so much that we can come here on a Saturday and we can just figure out a little bit about you and just know a little bit about who you are. I want to thank you so much that we have this opportunity to explore Joshua and his journey over these past 5 weeks. And the courage and the trust and the remembering and the perseverance that he had to do throughout his life. And then right at the end, that choice of whether or not we want to follow God, how he extended that to Israel. And I pray, God, that today that, for some of us who are here, who have come to that point in our lives where we want to make that choice, I pray that they choose to follow you. I pray that they look back on their history and understand that, man, you don't care about the messy parts. You're not afraid of those messy parts. And I pray that they choose to follow you. In Jesus' name, amen.